بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واعلموا أنما غنمتم من شيء فأن لله خمسه وللرسول ولذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعن الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. In this session, I am going to explain the rules of Zakat of Fitra or Zakatul Fitr, which is an obligatory duty on every Muslim, and it is a duty that has to be fulfilled by poor and rich, by people who are living in their own hometowns, and by people who are on a journey. It does not make any difference whether you are an independent person or a dependent person. Zakat of Fitra has to be paid. On the eve of Eid, or on the night preceding the day of Eid, one has to take out the Zakat of Fitra from his property. And the Zakat of Fitra is about 1 sa', which is an Arabic term, and 1 sa' is equal to 3 kilograms of wheat. Now, you are free to give either 3 kilograms of wheat or the price of 3 kg of wheat. It is better to give the price and the value of wheat rather than the wheat itself, because normally people who live in the cities, they don't have the means to powder or to grind the wheat and to flour and then use it for cooking or for baking. Now, if you give them money, they will go to the bakery and buy bread for themselves to eat. Now, it has to be remembered that one should give zakat on the staple food which one consumes. Now, if the staple food which you eat is normally bread, for example, you normally go to the bakery and buy bread and then use the bread to eat it with pulse or with beans or with such other things, vegetable, then that is the normal and the staple food of the ordinary people. Now, in some countries like Southeast Asia, normally people there eat rice even for breakfast. They have rice for every meal. They eat rice for dinner, they eat rice for lunch, and they have rice even for breakfast. So it means that rice is the staple food of the South Asian people. They have to give zakat on 3 kilograms of rice, not wheat, not bread. So if the price has to be calculated, it will be different. Those people who eat rice normally, they have to give the price or the value of 3 kilograms of rice, and those people who consume wheat or bread or pulse or grains like beans, they have to give the price of 3 kg of wheat. And of course the prices are different because wheat is cheaper than rice. Now, one important question is that what if a person is poor? For example, if you are poor and if you do not have the wheat or the price, the money to give. According to religious authorities, the indigent people, the masakin, they are not under the obligation to pay Zakat al-Fitr. And if you are poor, poor means that you do not have the expenses of yourself and your family for a year. If you are such a person, again, it is not permissible, it is not obligatory for you to give Zakat al-Fitr. Zakat of Fitr is obligatory on those people who can afford the expenses of themselves and their family, and they have the means or the income to provide for them and to provide for himself. So they have to give that much of wheat or the price of wheat or rice or its price to the needy. And I will explain as to who should receive the Zakat al-Fitr, the disposal of Zakat al-Fitr and the recipient of Zakat al-Fitr will be explained, the rules regarding them will be explained in a few while, inshallah. Now, according to some scholars, they have said that as an obligatory precaution, if a family, for example, has 3 kilograms of wheat, they have either 3 kilograms of wheat or they have the money. The precaution is this, that one of them should give their Zakat al-Fitr to another member of the family, and that member of family should give it to another member of family, because one family might consist of 4 people, 5 people, so they have to give it one to one another. And the last person should give it to someone other than those people who are a member of the family. The last person should give it to someone else, to another poor person outside of the family. This is one of the ways to get oneself relieved of the obligation of Zakat al-Fitr.
يا دافع الخطوب يا جابر المعطوف يا من هو مندوبي فعفوك مطلوبي يا دافع الخطوب يا جابر المعطوف يا من هو مندوبي فعفوك مطلوبي يا ستار العيوب يا غفار الذنوب يا ستار العيوب يا غفار الذنوب يا علام الغيوب يا كشاف الكروب.
Some families are really poor and they cannot afford. So if they cannot afford, this is one of the ways to get your Zakat al-Fitr paid. You as the head of the family can give it to your child, and your child can give it to his or her mother, and the mother of the family can give it to a needy person in the neighborhood, in the vicinity where you live. This is one of the ways you can, of course, relieve yourself of the obligation to pay your Zakat al-Fitr. Now, as the head of the family, it is the responsibility of the head of the family, the person who is independent, to give his Zakat. Now, if you are independent, you have to give your Zakat yourself. If you have your own source of income, you have to give your Zakat to the needy. And if you are living in a family and the family is provided by the head of the family, it is the responsibility of the head of the family to give their Zakat al-Fitr, to give the Zakat of the child, of the wife of the family, and of every member of the family who is supervised and who is actually headed by the head of the family. He is under the obligation to pay Zakat al-Fitr. Now, if someone, let's say, is living a single life, he is not living in a family, he is living somewhere, for example, in a house all by himself. Now the condition is that if he is sane, if he is conscious, and if he is adult, he has to pay his zakatul fitr. But if he is insane, if he is crazy, if he is not adult, and if he is not conscious, it is not obligatory on him to pay his zakat, his zakatul fitr. Now the question is, if he becomes sane before sunset, if he gains his consciousness before sunset, or if he becomes adult before sunset, is it a duty? Then it is not obligatory on him to give anything and to give zakat al-fitr. There's one more question. If a non-Muslim converts to Islam either before sunset or after sunset, sunset, which is the day before the Eid day, not on the Eid day, of course, if such a person is there who converts before sunset, he has to give zakat al-fitr. And if he converts after sunset, according to some scholars, the precaution is that, the obligatory precaution is that he should give his zakat al-fitr. But this is not a fatwa. When a marja says that this is an obligatory precaution, then of course the person can refer to another mujtahid who does not exercise precaution and who gives an explicit fatwa in this regard. So according to some scholars, the obligatory precaution is that he has to give zakat al-fitr if he converts after sunset. Now if he converts before sunset, there is no precaution, he must give it, and it is wajib on him to give zakat al-fitr. There is always a question about zakat al-fitr of a guest who arrives at home. Now you are in your home, someone comes in and as a guest. He might be an unwanted guest, or he might be an invited guest, someone who has been invited to your house. If he arrives before sunset, there is no doubt that you must give his zakat al-fitr, and it is a duty of yourself who has invited him or who receives the guest to give his zakat al-fitr. Even if he is an unwanted guest, it is necessary that you give his zakat al-fitr. It is not obligatory on the guest himself to give his zakat al-fitr. Even if they give or if they do not give, it is not a duty of that person to give his zakat al-fitr. Now if, for example, you give your zakat al-fitr yourself, again it is a duty of the person who has accepted you in your house and who has entertained you, who has given you food and a meal, to give you a zakat al-fitr. And that will be two zakat al-fitr, because one zakat al-fitr you have given it yourself, and while it has not been your duty, you have given it, that it will not suffice and that will not be sufficient. It is necessary for the master of the house, for the landowner, for the owner of the house, to give your zakat al-fitr, and that is a necessity. Now, if a guest is considered, if a guest comes after sunset, if he comes after sunset, and he is considered to be your actually guest for sometimes, in common view, of course, in the eye of custom, in the eye of urf. He is considered to be someone who will stay in your house for some times and who will, of course, eat from the food and drink that you will provide for him. In that case, again, it is necessary for you to give his zakat al-fitr. This is, of course, the fatwa of some scholars, and of course other scholars, some other scholars have different views in this regard. Many scholars say that it's not a duty because he has come after sunset. It is not a duty of the master of the house to give his zakat al-fitr. Now, in order for you to become certain about the fatwa of your own mujtahid, you must refer to the scholar, to the mujtahid whom you follow, in order to make sure that about your own marja's fatwa, your own mujtahid's fatwa. There's also a question: if a child becomes baligh after sunset or before sunset, is it necessary for the family, for the family or for the head of the family to give his zakat al-fitr or not? Of course, there is no doubt that zakat of that child has to be paid.
ناجيتك يا رحمن ودعوتك يا ديان يا خالق الإنسان الله 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 يا خالق الإنسان الله الله الله.
And if a child is born, of course, before sunset, it is necessary on the father to give his or her zakat al-fitr. Now, if a person dies before sunset or after sunset, what is the Islamic law about zakat al-fitr? The answer is this, that if he dies before sunset, it is not obligatory, it is not wajib on the members of the family or on his heirs to give any zakat al-fitr on his behalf. But if he dies after sunset, then it is necessary that zakat al-fitr has to be given from his property. If he is, for example, if he has any property, zakat al-fitr has to be given from his property. There is one question also in connection with zakat al-fitr. Now, there are families who have their members of the family living in another country. For example, the family is living in Pakistan. Now, this is an example. The family is in Pakistan, while the same family has people working abroad. For example, there are Shia people living in Australia, where their families are living in Pakistan. Now, what about if that person who is living abroad authorizes a member of his family to give something from his property as zakat al-fitr? Because if he gives zakat al-fitr in the country where he lives, he has to give, for example, $10. But if he permits someone to give zakat al-fitr from his property in Pakistan, then the zakat al-fitr will be 100 rupees. Is it permissible or not? Of course, all religious authorities allow this, and they have said that this can be done. This will be sufficient. Now, your family members who are living abroad, you can tell them that you will give zakat al-fitr on their behalf, and it's not necessary for them to give their zakat to the needy and the country where they live, because it will be either expensive or they may not find any poor people there in those countries. So it is feasible, it is permissible to do this. And of course, even if they do not have any property in the country where their families live, so their families can give something from their property, from their own property. For example, your father is living in a poor country, and you yourself is living or living in a first world country, for example. It's not necessary. You can tell your father to give your zakat al-fitr from the local currency, and that will be cheaper also if that is done. And it is not necessary for you to give zakat al-fitr from your own pocket if someone else gives that on your behalf. So this is a question asked by many people, and they wonder about how the zakat al-fitr should be paid and can be paid. Now that is one of the duties. You are not supposed to give it in dollars even in the country where your family lives. No, it is not necessary for you to send the amount or the currency of that country to another country in order that that currency should be exchanged for the currency of that country and then be given to the poor and to the needy. That is not necessary. Now, let's assume that you have taken out, you have separated the zakat al-fitr. The religious scholars have said that zakat al-fitr can be given during the month of Ramadan, but you cannot give it before the month of Ramadan. When the month of Ramadan starts, you can give it. Of course, the value, the price of 3 kilograms of wheat, you can give it to the needy and to the poor. But you should not delay it until after the Eid day. You have to, it is obligatory that after sunset, you have to take out the zakat al-fitr, and you have to separate it until before the Eid prayer or until before the midday of the Eid day. You have to separate it. And you cannot then replace the money. You cannot replace it. Now you have separated the money and put it aside. You cannot change that money with another or some other currency. That has to remain there, and it should, the same amount of money which has been taken out and which has been put aside should be given to the poor and to the needy. Now, there is one question as to the disposal of zakat al-fitr. Who has to receive, and who is entitled to receive the zakat al-fitr? Of course, according to all religious authorities, the zakat al-fitr has to be given to a Shia, poor and needy person. He has to be faithful, he has to be Shia, and he has to be needy also. He has to be poor. And you cannot give it to a person who is Shia but who is not a practicing Shia, who is Shia but who will use the money to buy something with which he will commit sins. Like, for example, he will use the money to buy CDs to watch, for example, movies, or he will use the money to gamble with. Now you have to make sure that the money which you give him, he will use the money for a lawful and permissible purpose. Now, it's not necessary that the person who receives the money should be adil, should be just. No, that is not a condition, because there are many people who are not just, who are not adil, but they are Shia, of course. And it is not a condition, it is not a necessity that the person who receives the money should indeed be a adil and should be just. Yes. And the religious authorities have said that one should give the zakat al-fitr to the neighbors, to the close relatives, if he has any needy and poor relatives. And of course, if he does not have, then he has to look for the poor and needy in his vicinity, in his hometown. And if there is no needy or deserving people, then he can send it to another city or another town where the money can be given to the needy and to the poor person. If someone claims that he is needy, if someone claims that he is poor, you cannot give it to him unless you are certain, unless you make sure that he is really needy, that he really deserves to receive the amount of money. Dear brothers and sisters, we have to do every act of duty, every act of worship with the intention of seeking nearness to God and with the intention of seeking proximity and qurba to God. No religious act is accepted and is considered to have been discharged and fulfilled unless one's intention is pure and one's intention is to seek nearness to God and to comply with God's order. So Zakat al-Fitr has to be given with such an intention, and one's intention should be to comply with God's order. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا
يا ربنا
واغفر لنا وارحمنا يا ربنا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا يا ربنا يا ربنا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا يا ربنا ربنا يا ربنا يا